Hey, Brittany.
Hey, Valerie.
Hi, so great to see you.
You too.
Well, I'm so excited we have a little bit of time to chat today and talk about your egg freezing journey. Why don't we start by telling everybody who you are?
Yeah, my name is Brittany Hawkins. I live in San Francisco and I am 34 years old.
Awesome. So, what got you into egg freezing? What was the first thing that you clatched on and got what egg freezing was about?
Yeah, I was actually living in Cape Town, South Africa for 5 years. Just moved back to San Francisco. I'm from the Bay Area originally, so being out in Cape Town was, maybe not where I wanted to potentially start my family. I was actually living there with my husband at the time, but we had so many unknowns, just where we were going to live, what our jobs looked like, and so this idea of the ticking, what I call the ticking biological time bomb, was sort of pushed in my face. And then I talked to a few friends and they mentioned the concept of egg freezing. So that's kind of where my journey began.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, you were married. So, what made you think egg freezing instead of embryo creation, for example?
It's a great question, one that I know that is sort of a hot topic as of late. And it's just really interesting. We had the conversation. There was some conjecture as to whether or not the success rates would be higher for an embryo. And there's also the idea that if you freeze embryos, then you can actually see how the quality of the egg before you freeze. The idea being that potentially I would have a better understanding if I needed to do another cycle or what our sort of future potential success rate might be. That said, there are so many variances on, where our lives could lead. And I don't know if you've seen some of the headlines, but, what if something were to happen to my husband and I? I mean, maybe it's not just, God forbid we break up, but what if something were to happen to him physically or myself physically, then we would not be able to use those embryos, or it would be kind of a weird legal ground to potentially use those eggs in the future, or embryos. So, call it a little bit of just, I don't know, me wanting to maintain a sense of autonomy, and the fact that I did get a decent number of eggs. So the potential for one of them to be successful in the future was a decently good, we'd have a decently good chance.
Yeah, and you froze your egg a couple of years ago. So, if you're 34 now, you were probably much younger.
Well, it wasn't that long ago. I was on the very beginning of 33.
Okay, and what year was that?
2018
Okay, so 2 years
was when
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, just under 2 years ago. Okay, great. Well, I don't know what the laws are in South Africa, but I'm sure they're different than in the States. And that would definitely bring up many different concerns, freezing embryos versus just freezing your eggs. So we get that part. So how do you feel like once you found your clinic and you knew you were going to embark on this process, how did the actual egg freezing journey go for you? Was it easy? Were the shots painful? What key things did you do to get through those 2 weeks of hormones?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't think that I had an aversion to needles, but the first application, or the first injection, I had a little bit of a freak out. I first thought that I had not actually injected anything. So then I went through and tried to inject again, and then I thought I'd injected twice. So then at that point, I actually fainted.
Oh,
I don't know. It was definitely psychosomatic. I was just having a little bit of a meltdown, and it turns out that I do have a needle aversion. And so I had a friend administer them from there on out. But
I see.
it wasn't painful per se. It was just the notion of it, and it's just weird. You're injecting your stomach with a needle. It's just not something you do every day.
Sure, it's not natural. I mean, and I mean, I'm sure drug addicts are good at it, but for everybody who's not a drug addict, This is a little bit more challenging. So you fainted the first time you gave yourself the shots. That's insane.
Properly, yes.
That's insane. And did your husband help administer some of the shots, or did you always have this friend?
It was both. So yeah, so I had a friend who was actually undergoing it at the same time. So, we sort of
bonded.
I don't know. It seemed easier, to have a friend who going through it at the same time. And it was bizarre because I was able to administer them on her.
Oh.
But the same was not true. I couldn't do it on myself.
You couldn't do it for yourself, but wow. Well, that's super fascinating and funny. Well, besides giving yourself the hormone shots, how did you feel while you were on the cycle? And what were some of the things going through your head at the time? Did you feel empowered after you were done? Give us a little bit of background on what you were thinking.
Yeah, throughout the whole process or the injection phase, it didn't feel much different. I felt bloated, but nothing, and a little bit fatigued, had to pee more often than normal, but it didn't really start to hit me until just a few days before the actual retrieval. And that's when I was getting pretty uncomfortable. I have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome. So with PCOS, you tend to have more eggs, which is good in theory, except for you think about how many eggs are just socked into your tiny little ovaries. And you could just feel the sort of weight in your uterus. So by the time we hit the retrieval, I was just ready to have them taken out. I was definitely feeling it towards the end. Not so much emotionally. I felt pretty fine emotionally. I was, I think approached it a little bit more practically. And for me, it felt very, proactive. I felt really good about my decision. So I didn't, it is a time when you obviously are starting to think about your life. You think about, what led up to that moment and where your future is headed. But it was interesting for me to take a pause and just realize what I'm willing to do to have a family in the future and how much that does matter to me, because I hadn't truly thought about it in such sort of visceral terms before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not like something they teach us in school, and you have years and years to prepare or think about it. This is kind of like something that the technology has kind of shifted as we've aged. And if you were born in a certain time period, like the 1980s, you were able to take advantage of this. But if you were older and born earlier than that, you might not be able to qualify for egg freezing because you would be too old. And we don't mean old like old. We mean just biologically, the age is a factor. So, well, it's really interesting to hear your journey, Britt, and how you went through this process and how you had a partner and a husband during this time too. Why don't you share with us your result of the egg freezing and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I did get quite a few eggs. And as you know, it's sort of a confusing journey because they retrieve a certain amount and then only so many are mature. And those are the ones that they end up freezing. And then we'll only actually know in the future as to whether or not they're high quality or actually viable. So I did get a good amount of them with PCOS. That is typically the case. Mm-hmm. But oh my gosh, I was in so much pain. Just that many eggs. My body was just not
extended.
Used to it. So
you were like,
oh my gosh, I just, this is too much information, but just peeing was so extraordinarily painful.
I felt like I was drinking so much. So you were always going to the bathroom, but I bet that's not much different than it is in getting pregnant. Maybe. Yeah,
I guess. I think I wanted the good thing is, you're supposed to actually drink a lot of water to flush out the hormones, but it just hurt so much. I probably wasn't as vigilant as I should have been. But yeah, so that left me feeling pretty, just, like a bit of a backup. They may not work in the future, but just knowing that I had taken that step really puts me at ease even now. because I'm still, I'm still not pregnant, still not trying, and there's, a lot of being in a pandemic. There's a lot of unknowns already intertwined with that. So just for me, kind of having that peace of mind has been really an emotional weight off my shoulders because, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of unknowns in the world right now.
Yeah, that's true. And it's hard. That's why egg freezing is so great, is because it can be the backup plan to the backup plan. I feel like we all
Yeah.
kind of have this idea of where like life will go and how it will turn out. And then when it doesn't go that way, it's really comforting to know, at least I thought, to have eggs on reserve or in backup in case
Yeah.
you don't want to try naturally for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've thought they may not work. And what are my alternative options? Would I be okay with having a donor egg or adoption? And, it's not like, the opportunity to be a mother just ends, but it was just going through the process really made me think about what those alternatives would be. So I think in that sense, it's just a good moment for pause to consider your own relationship with wanting to be a mother and what that looks like for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very key. Well, Britt, this has been amazing having this little chat with you, and I just want to thank you for sharing your story. You're doing so much amazing work in the space of egg freezing, and so I just want to, just really great to collaborate with women like you. So,
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, we'll catch up soon. See ya.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.